The Creep franchise is one of the strangest found footage movie series out there, consisting of two bizarre and thankfully not too long features. It centers around the titular creep who goes by many names and hires videographers to record him based on various made-up scenarios. In most cases, it's because he wants to make a cute little snuff film, but the sequel proved to show us a deeper look into this mysterious character. With the Creep tapes releasing this week on Shudder, I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to look back at both of these strange movies you probably found scrolling on Netflix. Now let's dive balls deep into Peach Fuzz the Friendly Wolf.
I'm gonna show you all. I'm gonna show you all. Oh shit, Jake! What'd he say? What in the... Man, why Jake always want me to come over there and film some weird shit for him? Damn, it's like every time. He only call me for weird shit. It can never be, hey man, let's just drink a beer. Hey man, let's just watch a horror movie. What? 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 All right. I will be there soon. I'm gonna show you off. I'm gonna show you off. Hey Jake, I'm here.
Hey buddy, come on.
What Jake? What? Jake? I hear water. What in the... Why am I... What the hell? Oh!
Hey buddy, how's it going?
It's going good, buddy. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm getting ready for my new Creep 1 and Creep 2 franchise video essay.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Do you like the costume? I'm Doug the Pug.
Yeah, Doug, this is dope, yeah.
I got a song just like Mark does in the movie, man. It's the same thing but better.
Oh, okay.
I'm Doug the Pug. I love to get in the tub, baby, yeah.
Oh God!
Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have old horror movies. Welcome to the retro page, everybody. The Creep franchise is the brainchild of Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass. The two frequent collaborators make up this movie's impetus. Brice directs, writes, stars in, and shot, while Duplass plays our main antagonist, co-wrote, and produced this one. Speaking with the Austin Chronicle a little while after the first film's release, Duplass stated that Creep was inspired by his odd Craigslist experiences and character-driven dramas. You can definitely feel the What About Bob and Fatal Attraction inspiration with this one. The film had an interesting approach as they went into shooting with only a few loose ideas. A couple conversations were had between the two before they shot this so they could refine the Creep character during production. That sounds so stressful. Imagine shooting this thing for 3 weeks and you come out of it with nothing of value. I would be genuinely heartbroken, but that's the risk you gotta take when you make a movie like this. Allegedly, there are 10 to 12 permutations of each scene, those of which I wish were DVD extras. There are, however, two alternate endings, one being Aaron and Joseph actually sitting down and having an unheard man-to-man conversation that feels like the ending to a wholesome indie movie, and one where it cuts away before Peach Fuzz can plant an axe into the guy's head. Before we talk about the real ending though, let's take it from the top. The film begins with Patrick Brice playing Aaron. He's looking for a big payday from an ad he saw on Craigslist offering $1,000 to film at some cabin for the day. He dreams of a lonely, rich, dommy mommy to give rubdowns to, but I promise you're in for quite the opposite, my friend. I've seen people call Aaron dumb, but I think he's just way too polite. There is a very big difference, and we'll get to that a little later on. He finally makes it to the Crestline cabin to find nobody home and an axe in the stump outside. He's jump scared by Joseph.
Hi. You have a really nice, kind face.
A scary introduction to a very scary and weird man. Joseph tells Aaron that he has terminal brain cancer and that he wants to shoot a video of himself for his unborn child. It's basically the same setup to My Life starring Michael Keaton, which even gets mentioned here. He constantly calls the camera and seemingly Aaron little buddy throughout this flick for that reason. That's only scratching the surface of how weird this one's about to get though. What draws me into Creep so well from this opening is this dynamic between the two characters. Talking about this, Mark Duplass stated, "We were were interested in the psychological profile of this very, very strange person. We were very interested in how you meet people and don't quite understand what's up, but you start to get signs. For us, that was intense eye contact, lack of personal space, oversharing, maybe a little bit too much love here and there, but for me, there's something wrong with both of these guys. Deeply. This concept of who is the creep in the scenario. Although this movie never makes me question if Joseph is the creep or not here, because like, yeah, it's definitely him. I don't know if the original creep executed that very well in my opinion, but what is great here is Mark Duplass's insane performance. We're definitely gonna spend some time analyzing what's so wrong with Joseph, but for a minute here, I want to talk a bit about Aaron. There's a reason he's Joseph's favorite, as he'll admit at the end of the first movie. I've seen a few reviews calling him stupid for ignoring the warning signs. There are a ton of creepy red flags that pop up about Joseph immediately, if it's the uncomfortable compliments or the excessive hugs. There's clearly something going on with this guy. Also, I got cold, I put on a hoodie. For Aaron, however, there are a lot of clues from the film that lead you to believe he's an empath, especially based on his embarrassing story he shares to Joseph over pancakes. Aaron tells Joseph that he had a problem peeing his pants when he was younger and that he was ridiculed for it. You can tell that this makes Aaron sympathetic towards Joseph, maybe even seeing a bit of himself in his insanity at first. This restaurant scene is perfectly placed in the film because at this point you are definitely asking yourself, why doesn't this guy just leave? You can tell from this story though that Aaron doesn't have the highest self-esteem. Maybe his inward reflection of himself is that he is the creep. That's why I think he's so forgiving towards Joseph up until basically this point in the film. Joseph does a lot of very weird and uncomfortable things throughout the first half of this one. Speaking of that, he makes Aaron film him while he pantomimes giving a bath to his unborn child. They seemingly baptize each other in a heart-shaped rock lake, and we meet his alter ego, Peach Fuzz, the friendly wolf. The clearly improvised song is probably the hardest thing to watch in this entire movie. It's something Michael Scott from The Office would do if he decided to take up the role of Hannibal Lecter. Originally, this film was titled Peach Fuzz based off of this pivotal scene, but they changed it to something more ambiguous to creep to avoid distraction. The filmmakers didn't want their audience to be thinking about what does Peach Fuzz mean the entire time. And no, thankfully this movie is not named off of Mark Duplass's pubes, which we do see in the film. Very early on too. Seriously though, they didn't want to distract you from a lot of those little details in the first 10 minutes of this movie. For example, the axe in the stump. Aaron finally has enough as the two get back to the cabin. He tells Joseph that he has a long drive back and that he should get going. The scene turns sinister as Joseph tells him to come inside so he can pour him a whiskey. He's got a Jack Torrance thing going on with that line and I like it. The two go inside and share an uncomfortable glass of whiskey. After Joseph tricks Aaron and steals his keys, he tells him a horrifying story. Joseph monologues about a time when the internet slowed down at the house due to his wife Angela watching that orange and black website. You know the one. Except she happened to be focused on the animal section. You know, when I first watched this movie, I didn't think it could get worse than Tubby Time and the Peach Fuzz song, but then we realized that Joseph is a killer furry. He goes on to tell Aaron that he SA'd his own wife in the Peach Fuzz mask and that song from earlier was made up. While the story is shocking, that latter point there came as a surprise to literally nobody. Aaron slips some Benadryl into Joseph's drink and he passes out. He steals his phone as it suddenly starts to ring. It's Angela. She tells Aaron that Joseph's her brother and that he should leave the cabin. She's voiced by Mark's real-life wife, Katie Aselton, which gives me some West Virginia vibes. No, they are not brother and sister in real life, thank God. This is all we know about her for now, but she might pop back up in the creep tapes so we can learn more about her and her brother's relationship. Not like that. Not like that. Awake now, Joseph stands in front of the door growling with the Peach Fuzz mask on. He also starts rubbing his butt against the door in a provocative manner. I think this scene also solidifies the undeniable homoerotic undertones of this movie. Joseph is a bisexual king. Aaron fights his way out of the cabin and escapes as the camera cuts to black. Moving into the second half of Creep, I think this is where the movie gets truly terrifying. If the first half of this movie is building a bunch of awkward tension, the second half brings the horror to your home. It's a pretty intense stalker situation that feels all too real. There's a part where Aaron wakes up to discover a big box on his front porch with a bunch of creepy items in it. One being a stuffed baby wolf with a totally normal and not weird heart locket inside. It features photos of Aaron and Joseph in it. I wish my homies would do that for me. Although it might be a little tropey, I also love the scene where Aaron is woken up in the middle of the night, walks around his house with the knife he got from that box, and we actually see Joseph hanging out outside of his door. Say what you want about this scene being cliche, it is terrifying. Sometimes it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's just about how well you roll it. Finally, Joseph leaves Aaron one last DVD saying he'll explain everything if he meets him at Lake Gregory in the middle of the day. That sounds safe. right? Aaron agrees and heads to the lake. During an absolutely insane and tension-fueled one-take, Aaron walks over to a bench and sits down, as Joseph comes up behind him with the Peach Fuzz mask on. Unbeknownst to Aaron, Joseph raises an axe above him and splits open the top of his head. It's the ultimate Hitchcock bomb, slow burn death that really captures all the best feelings of this film. It's just as goofy as it is terrifying, and much better than those other alternate endings, even though I do appreciate their existence. Finally, we see Joseph explain why he thinks Aaron is his favorite victim. He explains that Aaron was inherently good and never thought he would do any harm to him. Again, I don't think Aaron is dumb, he's just way too polite. It might be frustrating to see the decisions he makes on screen here, but that doesn't make him dumb. After this, we get a tease of more to come, as Joseph, calling himself Bill now, talks on the phone with another videographer. He places the DVD labeled Aaron in a cabinet filled with many others. I'm sure we'll be seeing at least 6 of those tapes here soon. Although I think this first movie in the franchise is super underrated, we don't really learn much about the titular creep. Joseph is a pathological liar who makes up extreme stories about himself. Now, while Joseph is one of the most unreliable characters we'll probably ever talk about on this page, I can't help but feel as if he's telling portions of the truth sometimes. Like I was talking about earlier, I think when they approached this first creep film, they didn't have the character completely fleshed out. Going back to those alternate endings for a second, one of the many endings of this movie was that Joseph and Aaron sat down, just had a man-to-man conversation, and maybe walked away from the situation without any horror or death. The sequel would dive deeper into who this guy is who goes by Aaron in the next film, so to clarify, when I talk about Aaron moving forward, I'm talking about Mark Duplass's character. Aaron starts off Creep 2 with his latest victim, Dave, played by Karen Sony. You might recognize him from the Deadpool movies as cab driver Dopender. Before Aaron all but admits his scheme to Dave, he explains that he's pretty dissatisfied with this film in particular. Dave comes off to me as another Patrick Bryce Aaron from the first movie. He's a naive, lonely dude in need of money and friends. He doesn't realize that he's being hunted, opposed to dealing with a guy that's just a little off like himself. Creep 2 Aaron just feels like he's making the same movie over and over and over again. You also get the idea that he's having a midlife crisis for the same reason, as he slices into Dave's throat and blood goes all over the back wall. It's not the best VFX I've ever seen, but thankfully it seems to be the last of it in this movie. I also think it's interesting that Mark Duplass mentions infinite jest here. Apparently this was the icebreaker between Dave and Aaron, how they met in the first place. They were both reading this same book, which I think has some thematic relevance. There are a lot of things going on in this David Foster Wallace novel, but I want to talk about the themes that specifically relate to Creep 2. One of the big plot points of this novel revolves around a brand new movie that people end up getting addicted to. They watch it over and over and over again to the point where they die in the process of consuming it. We get a taste of this in Creep 2 when we see Mark Duplass's Aaron watching the film he made in the first film over and over and over again. At least that's my guess based on the way he watches it. You'll notice that he's counting the footsteps he takes on his fingers because he's seen it so many times. He knows exactly how many footsteps he took before he planted that axe into the first movie's Aaron's face. Although it's incredibly subtle, I almost feel like Mark Duplass's Aaron is kind of addicted to making these films. On top of that thematic connection, Infinite Jest also talks a lot about a search for meaning. This also gets brought up a lot in Creep 2. We even hear Aaron talk a little bit about his raison d'etre, which literally translates to the most important reason or purpose for someone or something's existence. To Aaron, it's making these films. In March of 2020, Duplass and Bryce were developing a third Creep movie, but said they wanted it to be very inspired. I can tell from the opening scene of this sequel that the two didn't want to make another film that was exactly the same as the first movie. Another overly polite guy falling into the clutches of the creep. That's why the character of Sarah makes the sequel so special. She's a lighter reflection of Duplass's creep character looking for weirdos out there for her web series titled Encounters. Sure, like I guess she's still exploiting these people for that sweet internet money, but she's not killing them. The chemistry that happens between the two characters feels organic for that reason too. They're essentially in the same line of work and immediately have a strange connection. I've heard some folks say they don't like this movie as much as the first, and I think that's because there's a slightly different approach. The goofy, awkward moments and tension-fueled sequences come from Duplass oversharing his secret life with Sarah from the beginning, opposed to lying about some outlandish scenario. He is still lying about some stuff, however, which we'll talk about in a second. In an effort to make a different kind of film than what he's used to, he plays himself, so Sarah takes an interest in him for her web series. I think this is Aaron trying to challenge himself in his older age. He wants to see if he can still do this while showing his hand before things even get started. There are, of course, still some twists and turns along the way, however. While I love this concept, I don't know if the first half of this movie really works for me as well as everything from the first film. When Sarah first gets to his house, it's super uncomfortable and weird. I love that. One of the hardest scenes to to watch in all of the Creep franchise so far, at least, is when you have Mark Duplass coming downstairs in a towel and saying, well, you know, we gotta break down these gender boundaries. We gotta see each other naked. And they just met like not even 10 minutes ago. That scene is insane. But my one big nitpick with Creep 2 is this sequence where we're trying to film a documentary about the Creep's life. When he goes to this river, I don't know, it's just a little too silly and the tension totally dies for me. The scene just doesn't carry the same tension as the whole first movie that felt like a pot coming to a boil. While I appreciate this movie's attempt at giving this guy more character, I think the Creep is at his best when he's pathologically lying the entire time. I still love Creep 2, especially for Desiree Akhavan's performance as Sarah and the back half that picks up the suspense, but the more I watch this one, the less I like that scene. We do learn a little bit about the Creep's backstory, I think, from this scene, however, learning that he was birthed into this world sometime in December of 1978. He says that in an admittedly funny scene over multiple failed takes. Later that night, after jamming out to his favorite song Sarah Loves Her Juicy Fruit in a disgusting looking jacuzzi, he confesses his first kill. Apparently, after being beaten within an inch of his life by a truck driver, Aaron attacked and killed the man who was going to make him dig his own grave. This is one of the many stories the guy tells where I think some of it is true and some of it is purposefully false to set up things to come. The third act of Creep 2, for instance, literally features a dug up grave, which makes me think this part is made up. But I do believe the guy when he says he takes attributes from his past victims. For instance, he calls himself Aaron in this entire movie. The whole picking pieces out of his beard, though, might just be a nervous habit. I don't think this is a supernatural thing, just to clarify, but rather a part of his unstable psychosis. It's kind of like the mentality of performing cannibalistic acts in order to retain a personality trait from said victim. That is a real and very strange study. Look into it. While it's debatable which elements to his story are true or not here, I really enjoy the second half of Creep 2 that starts to build the tension again. After a few failed attempts to execute Sarah and even himself, the two head out to literally the middle of nowhere. Again, I have to make the argument that I don't think Sarah is an idiot for doing this. These two have similarities that have developed into a chemistry despite how odd things have gotten. They even shared a consensual kiss before descending deep into the woods here. Keyword consensual. The Creep brings her to a pre-dug grave where he begins stabbing himself in the side. He decides to tell her after that they should end themselves like Romeo and Juliet and fall into the grave together. Now that's stupid. After an intense climactic fight between the two, Sarah finally gets away. She knocks the guy in the head with a shovel, and let's be honest, he kinda deserves it. During a quick denouement, we're shown that both characters are still out in the world. The Creep starts to stalk Sarah throughout the streets. During the last shot of Creep 2, Sarah looks up and notices him as the camera cuts to black. A nice ambiguous finish. I'm hoping we see Sarah and Angela at least hinted at in the Creep tapes. To me, if the first movie is all about the Creep's favorite victim, the sequel is about the one who got away. There's a certain romanticism to these movies that I'm expecting to carry over into the show. I'll be breaking down each episode of the show over on the main channel as they come out. Make sure to check out those reviews when they drop. I think Josh Rubin is in the series based on the short teaser we got, and I can't wait to see the other new victims of the Creep. As you might be able to tell from the movies, that's a very important factor in making these stories work. Do the Creep and do it right.
Do the creep and do the creep.
What do you guys think about the Creep movies, and are you excited for the Creep Tapes TV series? Let me know about it in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.